And so with that, I am excited to introduce Dr. Marcus Cunha. He is a professor of business from the Department of Marketing and the program director for the MMR research program at UGA. He is joined with a few MMR candidates, Josie, Hannah, Will, Anna, and Kayla, and they will be discussing a fresh from the source, analyzing consumer attitudes towards locally sourced grocery. So with that, thank you so much for your time. We're excited for this presentation. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to go off camera and on mute. I'll be around to help field questions after you all are done. And thanks so much.
Thank you. Just making sure our audio is working.
It is, yes.
Okay, sounds good. And can you see our screen now?
Yes, we can see it.
Oh, all right. A big thank you to Krista and Bill, who have given our students this opportunity to present, get their feet wet into the world of conference as they're finishing up their MMR degree. For those of you who are not familiar with the MMR program, it's the Master of Marketing Research, is the first and program of this nature that over 40 years ago, and we have graduated many, many leaders in the industry. So if you or anybody who know is recruiting top talent in consumer insights and marketing research, I would suggest that you contact us at this email here. So just to give a little introduction, these students, this presentation today was part of the final project that the students presented in my course last fall. So and with that, I would like to invite the students to present.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today. So like they said, we are candidates here in the MMR program at the University of Georgia, and we're excited to show you our recent study on consumers' attitudes towards locally sourced groceries. So just to quickly run through our agenda, we'll start out with the background overview and methodology, then we'll move into our executive summary and key findings, and then finally we'll wrap things up with our recommendations, limitations, and future research. So to give you a little background on how we came up with the idea for this study, so we read Mintel's 2023 report on grocery retailing in the US, and from this we picked out 3 key facts that we thought were interesting and relevant to the study. So first is that shopping local is often perceived to benefit consumers and the community as a whole. Next is that consumers are eager to support causes that are important to them. And then finally, curated displays of locally sourced products can drive impulse purchases. And then to the right here, you can see there is a quote from Beth Bloom, who is a food and drink analyst at Mintel. And she's basically just talking about how a lot of consumers that buy local products do so for that increased freshness and to also support the local economy, and that these shoppers are willing to sacrifice cost savings to achieve those benefits.
All right. Thank you, Hannah. So following the secondary research, we came up with 3 objectives regarding locally sourced groceries. The first objective was to test the effect packaging labeling had on purchasing intent of the locally sourced groceries. Our second objective was to more broadly identify consumer attitudes toward locally sourced groceries. And then our third and final objective was to determine where people go to find their locally sourced groceries. So a hypothesis we came up with and decided to test was grocery products that include a locally sourced sticker will have a higher average purchase intent score when compared to products that do not include the locally sourced sticker across 8 products that we chose. And so getting into how we conducted the survey, so we had a sample size of 400 using AYTM to survey people through an online survey format. If you have not heard of AYTM, is it a platform that, and AYTM stands for Ask Your Target Market. AYTM is a survey building platform, somewhat similar in functionality to Qualtrics. It also has an online panel function built into the platform, which Qualtrics does not. We also wanted to note that we had a person on staff with AYTM who helped us quality control the survey as well. So we screened respondents as a pre-qualification measure to make sure they were either the primary shopper or at least shared some sort of grocery shopping responsibilities within a household. Anyone else was kicked out. In the middle here, we also have the gender breakdown. Wanted to note that it was roughly split 50-50. And then lastly, we made sure anyone surveyed was over the age of 21 due to their beer being one of the products that we wanted to test. And then the last note on this slide is that we also had a representative from AYTM balance out our age range quotas so that we didn't skew too old. And AYTM was really great at helping us with quotas in this survey and many others we performed. So just wanted to shout out them for great work there. So here we're going to get into the methodology. So we decided to perform A/B testing. As many of you may already know, A/B testing uses a control group versus a test group where all participants are split into either one group or the other. One group was shown the products with no locally sourced sticker, that being the control group, and the other group, the test group, was shown the products with the locally sourced sticker. In the middle here, we decided to capture consumer attitudes through the use of Likert scales. And then we also aimed to gauge where and how frequently participants find locally sourced groceries. Oh, apologies there. So to give you all an idea of what the A/B testing portion of the survey was like for the participants, we asked participants to imagine they were heading to the grocery store for a typical grocery shopping trip. We told them you will be shown a set of pictures, grocery items. You will be able to rate how likely or willing you are to purchase these items. So just wanted to note that, they're not shown both these images. They're only each group, half the respondents are only shown one set of images with or without the sticker. And, once we showed them that product, we would ask them to please indicate how willing you are to purchase these products on a scale of 1 to 7. 1 being not likely to purchase, 7 being extremely likely to purchase. So, in that A/B testing, we then take the control group and compare it to the test group results overall. Really just wanted to see if there is a statistical significant difference in purchase intent between the groups, or to state it maybe more simply, we wanted to see if the locally sourced sticker caused the product to perform better than the product without the sticker. So here you can see 8 products that we included in the A/B testing for purchase intent. We did want to note both peanut butter and potato chips. We did not imagine to be viewed as traditionally more processed than other products, but we wanted to include them anyway, just to have something a little bit different. It is worth noting that those surveyed were shown much larger versions of these products that took up an entire screen. So we do believe that the sticker was quite prominent for the participants.
Great, thank you, Will. And now we're going to get into our executive summary, which is just an overview of the recommendations that we made based off of our results. So first, we recommend that grocery stores create in-store displays for these locally sourced products so that their shoppers can find them more easily. Next, we recommend that farmers markets emphasize the proximity of their goods so that the people buying these products know that they are supporting people in their local community. And finally, we recommend that marketers use prominent labeling on their products so that people know that these are locally sourced goods and that they are benefiting the people in the community around them. And now getting into the results of our A/B test. So like Will said earlier, we showed all the participants 8 different products and asked them a purchase intent question for each of the products, with 1 being extremely unlikely to purchase and 7 meaning extremely likely to purchase. And then we compared the average purchase intent scores between the control and the test group to see if there was any difference with the presence of the locally sourced sticker. And we found that overall, there was no significant difference found in the average purchase intent scores between the control and the test group. So this indicates that the locally sourced sticker did not impact purchase intent. And next, we looked at kind of the breakdown for the 8 different products and compared the purchase intent scores between the control and the test groups for those 8 different products. And we found that only one of the products had a significant difference between the test and the control group, which was peanut butter. So the average purchase intent score for peanut butter was significantly higher for the control group. And as you can see on the chart on the left, 27% of those in the control group were extremely likely to purchase peanut butter, while only 10.5% of those in the test group were extremely likely to purchase peanut butter. So people liked it without the locally sourced sticker more. And then later in the survey, we asked a question about how often people are purchasing these locally sourced groceries, and we used that to divide them into two different groups, a high purchase frequency group and a low purchase frequency group. So those who said they always or often purchase locally sourced groceries, they were put into the high frequency group. And then those that said they only occasionally, rarely, or never purchase these groceries, they were put in the low purchase frequency group. And then for those two separate groups, we looked at the purchase intent scores between the control and the test group and compared those. And overall, we found that there was no difference in the average purchase intent scores between the control and test group for both high and low purchase frequency groups. And then we looked at it across the 8 products again for those two separate groups. And for those in the high purchase frequency group, there were no significant differences between the control and test group for any of the products. And then for those that have a lower purchase frequency, we found that both peanut butter and bread had a significant difference. And the control group was significantly higher on their average purchase intent scores compared to the test group. So infrequent purchasers were less likely to buy locally sourced peanut butter and bread. And so overall from our A/B test, we found that the presence of having a locally sourced sticker on a product did not lead to higher purchase intent. So that led us to reject our hypothesis that Will mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Anna. So next we wanted to look at consumers' attitudes towards locally sourced groceries and if that related to their purchase intent. So in order to do so, we asked 6 attitudinal questions spanning from I like locally sourced groceries, I find locally sourced groceries readily available, I believe locally sourced are good for the community, I'm willing to pay more for locally sourced, I trust that it is local to the community, and then I feel proud when I buy or use locally sourced groceries. So in order to gauge consumers' attitudes on this, we used a 7-point Likert scale and had respondents rate from 1 to 7, 1 being strongly disagree and 7 being strongly agree for each of the following statements. So as you can see here, we found that majority of respondents seem to like locally sourced groceries and believe they're good for the community. They trust they're local to the community and they feel proud when they buy or use locally sourced groceries. So looking at these different attitudes, we really want to hone in on 3 of these percentages, being the small percentage of consumers that were willing to pay more for locally sourced, that large percentage of consumers that believed they're good for the community, and then that kind of middle percentage, which was the 51% of consumers that agreed that they found locally sourced readily available. So looking at this chart here, we were looking at the 44% of consumers that were willing to pay more for locally sourced groceries. We found 28% of overall respondents disagreed with this statement. And we really found that this relates to their purchase behavior. So as you can see in this chart, on one side, we can see those consumers that were willing to pay more. And on the other, we see the consumers that were not willing to pay more. And the charts are almost inverses of each other, with 44% of consumers who always or often purchase locally sourced falling into that group of respondents who are willing to pay more. Then on the flip side, only 10% of consumers that are not willing to pay more always or often purchase locally sourced. And we also kind of see that, really flipping percentages with those consumers that never or rarely purchase locally sourced groceries. So we can really conclude here that your willingness to pay for locally sourced is going to match up to how often you purchase locally sourced groceries, as if you are willing to pay for locally sourced, you are going to purchase it. So then looking at that large percentage of respondents who agreed locally sourced groceries are good for the community, we did find though that even though these respondents had this positive view of locally sourced groceries, this did not necessarily mean that they purchase locally sourced a lot. So as you can see here, our largest within that percent, the largest percent of consumers only occasionally purchase locally sourced groceries at 47%, and only 32% of these respondents always or often purchase locally sourced. So having this positive view did not necessarily lead to increased purchases. Then lastly, looking at that kind of middle percent of respondents that agreed that they found locally sourced readily available, we had 26% of respondents disagree with this statement, and the charts are very similar and like inverses of each other, kind of like our first, looking at those consumers that are willing to pay more, with the higher percent of consumers who found locally sourced readily available always or often purchasing locally sourced at 47%. And only 7% of those consumers never or rarely purchase locally sourced. But then on the other side, out of the consumers that did not find it readily available, only 8% always or often purchase locally sourced, and 52% never or rarely purchase. So it just really shows that if consumers found locally sourced readily available, they were more likely to purchase rather than those that didn't find it readily available.
Thanks so much, Kayla. And kind of talking about finding these locally sourced products, we asked respondents whether or not they actively sought out locally sourced products, and only 35.3% of our respondents said that they actively sought them out, while the majority of respondents, 64.7%, said that they did not actively seek out locally sourced products, which, moving into our next slide, has an impact on where these locally sourced products are found by respondents. So as you can see, from a more low effort location, such as grocery store displays, where locally sourced products are more readily visible to respondents, there's very little difference between these two groups, those that actively seek out versus those that do not actively seek out, with only a difference of 1.9% of finding locally sourced products in this location. However, when you move into a more high effort in-person location, which we consider to be locations where locally sourced products are less readily visible to people, you can see that difference between these two groups increase dramatically. So in locally sourced product sections, you can see the percentages for both of these groups finding locally sourced products in this location dip. However, you can see the does not actively seek out locally sourced product groups dip dramatically, while actively seeking out group only dips a little bit. And then moving into farmers markets, which we still consider to be a more high effort location, those percentages increase for both groups. However, you can still see a bigger gap between these two groups with 19.4% difference. However, farmers markets we did consider to be a different location than product sections in grocery stores, because product sections in grocery stores are expected to have a mix of both mass distribution products and locally sourced products. However, farmers markets are anticipated to be mainly, if not all, locally sourced products. And then moving into our digital locations, such as social media and internet searches, you can see the percentage of people in both groups finding locally sourced products in these locations drop dramatically, especially with those that do not actively seek out locally sourced products, because we consider digital locations to be more high effort, because typically a user would have to actively search out these products in the first place, even for social media to come up on an algorithm naturally. And then moving to Hannah, we move into our recommendations.
Great, thank you, Josie. So we identified 3 key stakeholders and created some recommendations for each of them. So beginning with grocery stores, as we touched on earlier, a lot of consumers are interested in buying locally sourced products. However, many of our respondents noted feeling as though these products are difficult to find. So that led to our first recommendation, which is that grocery stores should create in-store displays to streamline access to and elevate the visibility of locally sourced products. Our next recommendation is for farmers markets. So according to the USDA, locally sourced goods can actually be produced from up to 400 miles away. But in our study, we found that most consumers perceive them to only be from 0 to 100 miles away. So we think that farmers markets should emphasize the proximity of their goods to highlight the close production to consumers compared to grocery store products. And then finally, for marketers, like we mentioned earlier, a lot of people do associate buying locally sourced products with those feel-good emotions and believing that they're good for the community. So we recommend marketers to utilize prominent labeling and altruistic marketing messages to tap into consumers' perceptions of locally sourced goods benefiting the community. Now, just to touch on some of our limitations for the study. So we did only include respondents that were at least 21 years of age, and this was intentional because we included beer as one of the products in our survey. However, it does mean that we missed out on collecting responses from younger consumers that could still have some valuable opinions. Next, we only included respondents that identified themselves as either a primary shopper or someone that shared the responsibility of grocery shopping for their household. So we couldn't collect responses from everyone that just grocery shops occasionally, but still might be interested in locally sourced products or have some good feedback there. Then we did not include an attention check in the study, so we cannot be sure that everyone was paying attention. So some people in the test group may not have noticed the locally sourced label on the products that they were shown. And then finally, just our limited time and budget. We did have a certain set of time to complete this project. However, we think with more time and money, we would be able to dive deeper into this study as well as some of the future research questions that Josie is about to touch on.
Thanks, Hannah. So as Hannah mentioned, if we had more time, we would love to dive into some different topics relating to locally sourced products and how they are marketed to individuals, with the first being how the addition of a location to locally sourced label affects purchase intent. We only used a sticker that marked that it was locally sourced, but we did not include a specific location such as Athens, Georgia. And we would want to see how the addition of a certain mileage, such as 50 miles from where they are, or a certain city would affect purchase intent for that specific product and subsequent purchase behavior. The second one we would want to research is how the presentation of locally sourced items in a grocery store display facilitates purchases. We'd like to see how the specific display, the height of it, and the different marketing tools surrounding it, as well as the location in the grocery store, would affect the purchase intent of specific products and subsequent purchase behavior as well. And then finally, we would like to see how time spent grocery shopping affects the purchase behavior and the purchase intent of locally sourced products. We wanted to see whether or not high levels of grocery store shopping and high time spent in a grocery store could either increase or decrease the purchase intent to locally sourced products. And with that, that leads us to the end of our presentation. We want to give a special thank you to Accelerant Research for allowing us to present this topic that's very exciting to us. And we wanted to give a special shout out to AYTM for helping out with our survey and being a resource for us, not only in this project, but throughout the program. And then finally, we wanted to thank everyone who watched our presentation today. It's been absolutely exhilarating to be able to present to y'all really important research to us, and we want to thank you just once again. So now we will open it up to any questions that we'd love to answer for you.
Thank you so much. I don't see any questions in the chat right now. So as people are thinking up some questions, one thing that I would like to ask is what you learned along the way throughout this research and what you would do differently. And this can be an individual answer or each of you can respond.
Sure, I can definitely start out. I think one of the main things that I learned personally throughout this project was the ability to pivot. At first, we didn't necessarily know the direction of how we wanted to take the locally sourced labeling. And after bouncing off a couple of ideas, we decided to do A/B testing as the best form. And when we disseminated our survey, we thought, oh, this is going to be great. Locally sourced products are definitely going to have a higher purchase intent. And then coming to the end, we actually realized that our results showed the opposite. And so in asking other questions in our survey, we were able to pivot those results and come up with new recommendations based off of those, which was very exciting because that is how a lot of research is going to be. It's not going to be exactly cookie cutter, perfect results, and the ability to shift that and still come up with actionable recommendations was a very important tool that I will definitely carry on in my professional career.
And yeah, along with that, I mean, that was a big thing that I think all of us learned from this project. Also, just going through the motions of conducting an A/B test was really big for me because we had talked about it in classes, but never actually performed one. So we had to go through all the steps of figuring out how to actually program that into AYTM, into our survey. And then once we got the results, we just kind of stared at them because we were like, we don't really know how to test this. And then Marcus was very helpful and kind of guided us through the process of analyzing our results and kind of interpreting what we got from them, which was very helpful for me. And now I know how to interpret and analyze an A/B test, which is something that I'm definitely going to use in the rest of my career.
I agree with all that was said. I think one really practical takeaway for me in addition to that is that if I were, the next time, say I do A/B testing, I think I might have gotten a little bit more qualitative feedback on how things were presented, just from people who had no, weren't related to our design process at all, didn't know anything about it. Just say, hey, can you look at this and tell us what you think? Like, we think the stickers were good, but they might have had a different opinion and said, oh, I didn't realize the sticker was on there. I don't think that would have been the case, but the point is we probably would have gotten more feedback just to improve the overall efficacy of the survey. And that's all we have for that question.
Okay, I did receive a question in the chat. Lori would like to know, if you ran this test at a Whole Foods market in person, how would you guess the results might be different?
Interesting questions. Does anyone have anything that immediately comes to mind?
I definitely think if we ran it at Whole Foods, we would see kind of a higher consumer attitude like perspective of this survey. I think a lot of people would have that higher purchase intent, but also have a higher view on locally sourced groceries, as a lot of their platform, I feel like, is around having kind of that fresh, like locally sourced. So I definitely think the results would differ, and we might also see more significant results in the purchase intent, or if someone else wants to touch on that too. But I definitely think it would really affect our consumer attitudes portion of our study.
Yeah, and in addition to that too, I think that I would just guess, and who knows if the results would bear this out, that the shopper might be just overall more conscious of what they're buying, where it's from, and how it might affect the community, just because, you know, everyone and their mother shops at more normal stores, but, you know, Whole Foods and more specialty stores, maybe you get a consumer that looks into how they're shopping more, maybe you get a more, a different tier of consumer, if you want to put it that way.
And that is actually something that I would do differently with this survey. I would definitely break our results down by where consumers shopped. I think that has a big effect on how people shop and their attitudes towards grocery shopping in general. I also think that our question of, we made a choice to exclude anybody who was not the primary grocery shopper, or at least share the grocery shopping experience. But I would definitely like to see the addition of people who didn't necessarily have the majority share of grocery shopping, and see their different opinions and where they shopped, because that definitely has an effect on whether or not you decide to purchase locally sourced or mass distribution. And it also determines which products fall into either category and which products are important.
Thanks. Well, I don't see any other questions. I do have a note of feedback that just says that you all did a great job. That note is from Jessica. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for presenting to us. We enjoyed hearing your experience and learning about what you would do differently. And so with that, I will let you all say your final remarks, and then we will get ready for our next presenter.
Once again, a big thank you to Kristen, Bill, and Accelerant, who have allowed our students to have the experience for 4 years now, and such a great experience for them. So I hope, you know, just like I think was Jessica said, that you agree that, you know, we're producing very high quality students here, and that I hope if you have needs now or in the future, that you look into the MMR program to recruit from, or if you know somebody who's interested in this career and want to apply to the MMR program, please let us know and send them our way. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.